Chapter 15. Rescue in Action. Luke's biography contains many examples of people moving from the danger of facing God's judgment to the safety of knowing Christ's rescue, all because of their encounter with Jesus. One of the more striking instances is found at the end of this section of Luke. It involves a man named Zacchaeus, a tax collector. He, like so many others in his profession, had kept his distance from God and decided to live for his own gain at the expense of others. He was indeed a sinner. Nevertheless, Jesus appears to have singled him out one day, and for Zacchaeus, it marked a whole new beginning. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. There was a man there named Zacchaeus, senior tax collector, who was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but because of the crowd was unable to, for he was a small man. He ran ahead of the crowd and climbed up a fig tree to see him, because Jesus was about to pass through that way. When Jesus got to that point, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, climb down quickly, because I have to stay in your home today." He climbed down quickly and welcomed Jesus gladly into his home. When everyone saw this, they complained, "He's gone to stay with a man who is a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, half my belongings, Lord, I will give away to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone out of anything, I will repay 4 times that amount." Then Jesus said to him, "Today rescue has come to this home, for this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and rescue what was lost." Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through to 10. It is not clear how Jesus happened to know about Zacchaeus' reputation in Jericho. Perhaps it was just a miraculous insight on the part of Jesus, or perhaps when he entered the town, he'd simply asked people to point out to him who the most obvious sinners were. Whatever the case, despite the taboos I mentioned earlier about mixing with sinners, Jesus makes a point of selecting Zacchaeus out of the crowd so he could stay with him. Although Luke records that Zacchaeus welcomed Jesus into his home, the far more profound welcome was the one that Jesus gave him. Despite the fact that Zacchaeus had deliberately and offensively distanced himself from God, Jesus wanted to communicate, to the crowd as well as to Zacchaeus, that God was in the business of seeking out and rescuing people. Zacchaeus is so overwhelmed by Jesus' acceptance of him, despite his faults, that he responds by pledging some significant life changes, not only giving away half of his considerable possessions, but also repaying those he'd cheated 4 times the amount he owed them. Such is the impact Christ has on people when they feel themselves to be welcomed by him. Hearing Zacchaeus' pledge, Jesus makes a terrifically reassuring statement to Zacchaeus. According to Jesus, people like him are precisely what his mission is all about. His life's work was to seek out and rescue what was lost. With these words, the second big theme of Luke's portrait of Jesus reaches a climax. Jesus is God's rescuer, sent to save people from the judgment of God by offering them forgiveness and a restored relationship with their Maker. For me, there is a question that emerges from all of this. In terms of Jesus' early hypothetical about the distant son, am I securely within God's household, or off in a faraway land spending his resources whilst refusing his friendship? In other words, am I, on Jesus' definition, a sinner in need of rescue? The Zacchaeus episode, and many others like it, remind us that what is hypothetical in Jesus' parable can become reality in people's lives. God forgives and forgets.